10 greatest black lightweights of all times, in my opinion, must include the legendary Sidney Walker, better known to the boxing community as Beau. I'm Scrapbook Boxing. Museum of the Forgotten, Fisticuff Series. Let's talk about Beau, one of the greatest lightweights of all times, no question about it. Now, Sidney Walker, who was born in Waynesboro, Georgia, April 1st, 1921, had a grandmother who instilled some values to Beau. One afternoon, he would walk into the house crying, and she wanted to know what he was crying for. And he explained to her with his head down that the boys took his money. You see, Beau was very upset that day because he earned close to $20. That was a tremendous amount of money at that time. He shined shoes for a living. And it was a neighborhood bully named Leroy. Leroy was always picking on the kids in the neighborhood. So he walked over to Beau while Beau was on the corner. Had his chair and shoe shine box all set up. And Beau was actually prepared to leave because it was supper time. Leroy would sit on the chair of Beau. Beau was in process of folding up the chair to exit the premises. But Leroy would have none of it. He would look into the jar of Beau and wanted to know, what was this? Beau asked him, what was it that you really want from me? Because he noticed that Leroy's shoes were already shined. And Leroy said in his eloquent voice, any money belonging to you belongs to me. And I'm paraphrasing. These corners are mine. And since you earn money on this corner, you must pay me. And he grabbed his money and he grabbed his shoe shine box. Beau tried to get it back from him. Leroy would shove him to the ground. Although Beau was standing up inside himself, but he laid on the ground, understanding that he would never see that $20 again. He would stand up and grab his empty jar, walking to his grandmother's house with his head down, with tears spraying and rolling down the side of his cheeks. Grandmother asked him, what was he crying for? She had a food waiting for him, a plate of food waiting for him. And as anxious as Beau was to dig into that plate, he was not anxious to explain to his grandmother what he was crying for. And she told him to look at him in the mirror. Look at himself. And she wanted him to see what she saw. And she asked him one more time. May I ask you again, is that what you're crying for? And he said yes. She told him to go in the room and grab that belt off the hook of that door and hand it to her. Now, Beau at this point knew what was coming. And in syllables, his grandmother expressed to his hide, no Walker, and this is not a metaphor, runs from no one. Because his grandmother believed in one thing: your last name tells the story of your life. And she touched him up pretty good, to the degree that Beau would never run from another man again. Following day, Beau would find Leroy, would walk up to him, once again standing up inside himself. He said, you owe me something. Leroy laughed, with 3 fellas with him. Beau would grab him and slam him to the ground, pin his arms to the concrete as he would beat him half to death. Picked his pockets, ran home to his grandmother, and said, look what I found. His grandmother hugged him. And from that point forward, he would take it out on some of the greatest fighters of all time, the greatest such as Sammy Engot, Henry Armstrong, Tibby Larkin, Johnny Bratton, Fritzy Zivik and Bob Montgomery, Juan Zarita, who, by the way, 1944, Ike Williams would defeat the current NBA lightweight champion, Juan Zarita, in 10 rounds. It was a non-title affair. But Beau has quite a story. Now, there have been bigger fighters who have bigger careers. But when you look at the lightweight champion, Beau, he has a remarkable story. Consider from 1941 to 1949, Jack would have 27 fights in Madison Square Garden. He would headline 21 on the cards. Regularly drew crowds of 20,000 spectators. Consider that in 1 month, March 1944, main event events in 3 shows against 3 world-class fighters, Bob Montgomery, Al Bummy Davis, and Juan Zarita. And considering that in August 4th, 1944, Beau and Bob Montgomery, who had been drafted into the Army, the very same day, met at New York's Madison Square Garden and produced an all-time record game, $35,864,000. Staggering total was a result of the sales of war bonds. Beau wrote Jimmy Cannon in 1955. One of the best fighters I have ever seen, but there was never a gamer one. People respected him. He had tremendous courage, heart of a lion, the endurance of a water buffalo. He had the eye vision of an eagle and the memory of an elephant. KO'd Ali Schultz in 7 rounds, New York's Madison Square Garden, November 13th, 1942. Now, the Slick Stoltz, who was a 3-1 favorite, was supposed to expose Beau, who was 41-6 as a club fighter. But in the 4th round, Jack landed a right hand that opened a tremendous cut over the eye of Ali Stoltz. And when the bout was finally halted, a contender had been born. Beau was trained by Hammer Henry Armstrong, who was his mentor. And he would get Beau to stoop low at the arc of his punches. Beau would knock out Tippy Larkin in 3 rounds. New York City, December 18th, 1942. And this would be after Sammy Aingart's retirement. Beau and Tippy Larkin were matched for the vacant New York SAC lightweight championship crown. Less than a minute into the shootout, Tippy Larkin was floored for a count with a right hand, beautiful uppercut. It was in the 3rd round. The Associated Press described the contest as one of the greatest and fastest punching fests that they had witnessed in New York's Madison Square Garden in years. And Beau would take on his mentor, Henry Armstrong, defeating him in 10 rounds. New York's Madison Square Garden, April 2nd, 1943. Henry Armstrong would also take on a future prospect named Sugar Ray Robinson that same year. Henry Armstrong would teach Beau the tricks of the trade as he was outpointed. And his idol, Beau would wallop in tears. This would happen in front of an audience of 19,986 spectators. They would boo Beau in New York's Madison Square Garden. Henry Armstrong would give thrilling bouts, not only in the main building in Madison Square Garden, but the New York Madison Square Garden Bowl, where he would capture the welterweight championship belt in 1938 from Barney Ross. Bojack would defeat Bob Montgomery in 15 rounds, New York's Madison Square Garden, November 19, 1943. Jack and Montgomery met a total of 4 times. They were each lightweight winnings. Both men would win twice. This would be their second contest. Jack would gain the title. He had lost to the Bobcat 6 months earlier. Jack was a 4-1 underdog. It was expected to tire later on in the rounds. Bob Montgomery did indeed rally in the 14th and 15th, but Jack held on to take a close and popular point decision. This was one of the greatest triumphs of Jack's career. He would face Bob Montgomery once again, losing in 15 rounds in New York's Madison Square Garden, March 3rd, 1944, as an underdog. He dominated the series. Jack was a 9-5 favorite. This was their third clash. 2 weeks earlier, the Bobcat had been KO'd in 1 round by Al Bummy Davis. Jack fell behind under the first 8 rounds. And then he rallied with superior power in the 9th round through the 13th round. Bob Montgomery was close, with spirit enough, vigor and vigor to secure a split decision victory. Jack's championship days were now over. But on March 31st, 1944, he would win 10 rounds against Juan Zurita in New York, Mexico. Zurita was coming off a victory over Sammy Engard. He was a reigning NBA lightweight champion. He confused Jack by switching from orthodox to southpaw, but Jack applied enough pressure to take a close but unanimous decision. 1944. Jack was named the Rings Fighter of the Year. In July 12, 1948, Bojack would take on Trenton Thunder's Ike Williams, who at this point was the unified New York SAC and NBA lightweight champion of the world. When Ike Williams would defeat Juan Zurita, 1945 in Mexico City, Ike Williams was met with half-eaten sandwiches, and coffee, different forms and colors of juice, gum and cigar ashes, and everything that can be thrown at a rushing moving target. Ike Williams did not celebrate his victory in the ring. He would make it back to his locker room, where he would begin to celebrate, but he was met with a young man by the name of Sidney Walker. He said, "We got to get it on, we got to get it on." So they would set up that match for July 12, 1948. It would be at Philadelphia's Shrine Park. Williams and Jack would once say, he would be the fighter that would tame me. Bojack would later on in life explain that Ike Williams would destroy you. He had straight punches and they were devastating. You see, Bojack was pinned in the corner against the ropes for 35 unanswered punches, as his head and body would move in different directions from the force of the blows. But a devastating puncher Ike Williams was, but no more gallant fighter would represent that ring that evening. Bojack would make his mentor Henry Armstrong very proud. Now, what was phenomenal about Bojack in New York's Madison Square Garden bouts, November 13, 1942, when he took on Ali Stokes, there were 14,249 members in the audience. They grossed 34,786 receipts. And Bojack was stopped Ali Stokes in 7 rounds. December 18th, 1942, he would take on Tippy Larkin. The 18,817 spectators in the audience. They would gross receipt $58,468 that evening. But Tippy Larkin would be stopped in 3 rounds. And that would be for the NYSAC Lightweight Championship crown. February 5th, 1943, Bojack would take on Fizzy Zivic. He had 21,240 members in the audience. They would collectively gross $70,291 in the seats. And Bojack would defeat him in 10 rounds. He would defeat him again in 12 rounds on March 5th, 1943. 18,813 spectators would come to see if this was a fact. Did this really happen? Was it a fluke? And $71,346 was collectively paid for by the audience. On April 2nd, 1943, Bojack would take on Henry Armstrong. 19,986 spectators would witness this splendid event. They would gross $104,976 to witness Henry Armstrong be defeated in 10 rounds. May 21st, 1943, Bob Montgomery and Bojack would gather 18,343 spectators, grossing $94,500, and Bojack would lose in 15 rounds. October 4th, 1943, Bojack would take on Bobby Ruffin. 14,449 spectators would pay a total of $43,429 to witness Bojack lose 10 rounds. What was amazing about Bojack? He would total 355,092 members to watch him have 21 main event bouts in Madison Square Garden. They would collectively gross $1,578,069. Bojack was a hell of a fighter. $1,578,069. I stand corrected, but that's still a lot of money. And Bojack was just that kind of a fighter. Now, Bojack fought 21 main event bouts in Madison Square Garden from November 1942 to December 1949. The majority of them, 1943 and 1944. He drew a total of $355,092. And the people gross gated $1,578,000. This does not include when he faced Bob Montgomery. We're going to take a look at an article of Bojack and Bob Montgomery in one moment. August 4th, 1944. Administered. It was by purchase of the United States war bonds. The total gross gate of this fight was $35,864. That was a record gate. As we look at an article, November 19th, 1943, and it says here, May face Ruffin and ain't got go. Whoever the winner is. Beau's whirlwind attack over 15 rounds upset Montgomery. And Bojack today occupies with Lou Ambers. That niche aficionado Hall of Fame, reserved for lightweights. Trying to get all the writings here, who have regained their titles from the men who had previously taken the honors from them. They are the only two in all-ring history to accomplish the feat. Up until this point, of course. Bojack may have built 4 months. Bojack may have but 4 months to enjoy the thrill of again being crowned king of the 135-pounders. Because at the end of that time, he is pledged to fight Montgomery again. And they're basically forecasting that Bojack possibly would lose against Bob Montgomery in a rematch. Mike Jacobs has Bobby Ruffin signed to meet Sammy Ingat, the NBA lightweight champion. 10 rounds on November 29th. Mike now wants to extend the distance of this bout to 15 rounds. The NBA title to go to Ruffin if he wins. Now here you have Henry Armstrong. Hank's Furious fails as Jack wins 19,986. See the bout. April 2nd, 1943. It was like seeing double at the Garden last night. You could have hardly, well, basically it's saying, tell the difference between Henry Armstrong and Bojack. Young Bojack, a reasonable facsimile of the original Hammer and Henry Armstrong. These are the prelims on that card. I'm just scrolling around here, trying to find you some articles of Bojack, because Bojack was a phenomenal fighter. He really, really was. I think he's underrated, in my opinion, in terms of lightweights historically. Now, this was an article I wanted to show you. I did a profile on Bob Montgomery. Montgomery's attack defeats a fighter by the name of Frankie Wills. And he fought July 20th of 43. I can show you these articles all day. I have so many of these articles. Jack dethrones Montgomery. November 19th, 1943, this article. Unanimous decision in 15 rounds. Beau reeling in 5th and 14th. Regained title and upset. Now, another article I didn't show you when I talked about Bob Montgomery. Bob Montgomery and Fritzy Zivic. 22,500 members in the audience. You know, when I get the free time, I just love going through these articles. I have probably about 50,000 articles. No exaggeration. Books upon books upon books upon books. With original newspaper articles in them. One of the largest ever. No question about it. And I try to preserve these because these heirlooms. And I used to bring these over to Bob Montgomery to take a look at. He would get a kick out of them. Beau was some fighter and a great man to talk to. I had great conversations with Beau. Some Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series, all great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. And when Beau defeated Ali Stolz, that put him in line to fight for the vacant lightweight championship belt with Tippy Larkin. Ali Stolz, another pleasure to speak to. The thing with Beau, he went back to shining shoes when his career was all over. But in his youth, he could dress. You talk about three-piece suits. That's Beau. And everyone respected Beau. When you went to Miami, the Fontainebleau Hotel, you didn't go down there until you stopped by Beau shoe shine box. And he would earn hundreds of dollars just in tips, just to be allowed to take pictures and photos with him. He was the attraction. He was one of the greatest lightweights, in my opinion, that belongs in my top 10 greatest black lightweights of all times. Thanks for watching. Beau Sidney Walker, the Georgia Shoe Shine Boy. Peace.